I used to think graduation day would finally make things feel equal between my sister and me. We crossed the same stage, wore the same gown, heard the same applause, but only one of us walked that journey without drowning in bills and night shifts. My parents paid for Callie's tuition and every luxury she wanted. All I ever got was the same line they'd repeated my whole life. You were always the strong one. I believed it until the moment they showed up smiling at our ceremony and their faces suddenly drained of color when they realized what I'd achieved without them. My name is Jianna Harper, and for as long as I can remember, people have mistaken quietness for strength. I grew up in a small house in Oregon, where the walls held more expectations than affection, and where love, at least the version handed to my sister, felt effortless, abundant, almost blinding. Callie was the sparkly one, the golden one, the daughter my parents seemed proud to display. I was the other half, the one who blended into door frames and learned early how to fold disappointment into silence. Some of my earliest memories carry a strange heaviness, like the Christmas when Callie unwrapped a dollhouse taller than her with tiny lights that flickered like real windows while I opened a thin notebook and a pen. Mom smiled and said, "You're the writing type, sweetie." I pretended to love it. That night, I hugged the notebook, not because it meant something, but because there was nothing else to hold. Or the time Callie scraped her knee falling off the backyard slide, barely a scratch, and Mom rushed out screaming her name like the world was ending. A week later, she was still retelling the story to neighbors. Meanwhile, when I fell from the apple tree and hit the ground so hard my vision blurred, Dad only glanced out the window and said, "Gianna's tough. Let her handle it." That sentence spoken so casually became the script of my childhood. You're tough. You'll manage. You don't need what other people need. The only person who didn't treat me like I was carved from stone was my grandmother Margaret. She lived in Montana, visiting only a few times a year, but every visit felt like a warm patch of sunlight. Once, when Callie showed off a new crystal bracelet, Grandma slipped a small wooden hair clip into my hand, my name carved on the back. "It's not expensive," she whispered, "but it's one of a kind, just like you." I wore it whenever I felt invisible, like a reminder that someone somewhere truly saw me. School didn't change much. I worked hard, got high grades, won essay contests. Callie drew sunflowers and got them taped to the fridge. When I earned a district writing award, Mom didn't even look up from the stove. But when Callie got a B+ in history, she invited the neighbors over to celebrate. I learned to swallow my pride quietly. By the time we got into college, the pattern was already set. Callie's full tuition paid, a new laptop, a monthly allowance, an apartment she didn't have to clean. I moved into a damp basement dorm and stacked multiple jobs to stay afloat. Every time I called home, exhausted, Mom would say the same sentence like a lullaby made of guilt. "You were always the strong one, Gianna." It was meant to praise me, but it only reminded me that no one ever planned to hold me up. And yet, despite everything, a small part of me still believed that graduation might change something, that maybe this time they would finally see me. College didn't break me, but it reshaped me in ways I never admitted out loud. While Callie floated through those 4 years, like she was on a guided tour, new outfits, weekend getaways, brunch photos with friends, I was learning the price of survival. I woke before sunrise to mop classroom floors, tutored high school students in the afternoons, and worked late shifts in the library. I tracked every dollar in a tiny notebook, calculating how many hours of work equaled a tank of gas or a week of groceries. Callie never asked how I was doing. She'd wave at me across campus sometimes, always surrounded by people, always laughing like the world bent to make her comfortable. Whenever she talked about exams or stress, Mom would say, "Don't push yourself too hard, honey." But when I mentioned working 3 jobs, Mom's voice would soften into that familiar dismissive reassurance. "You were always the strong one, Gianna. You'll be fine." Strength in her eyes meant I didn't get to need anything. I remember one particular afternoon during junior year. I had just finished a 4-hour shift shelving books when I spotted my parents' car outside the student center. For a brief second, excitement startled me. Maybe they were here to see me. Maybe they finally wanted to know how I was really doing. But when I walked outside, Callie was already in their arms, twirling a new purse they'd brought her just because. They barely noticed me standing there, sweat dampening my collar from rushing out. Dad waved half-heartedly, and Mom said, "Oh, sweetie didn't see you. You look tired. Callie needs help choosing classes. Could you give her advice?" Advice. As if effort was the only thing I had to offer. Moments like that repeated again and again, small cuts never deep enough to kill me outright, but enough to make breathing sting. Still, I kept moving forward. I studied late, applied for internships I wasn't sure I deserved, and built a future piece by piece with hands no one expected anything from. By senior year, I had stopped waiting for my parents to ask about my accomplishments. When I got selected for an advanced accounting seminar, I celebrated alone with a cheap muffin from the campus cafe. When a professor pulled me aside to praise my analytical work, I smiled quietly and rode home on a bike with rusting spokes. Graduation loomed like a finish line and a funeral all at once, the end of being overlooked, but also the confirmation that nothing I did had changed the way my parents saw me. Callie, meanwhile, talked nonstop about the photo shoot she planned for commencement. Mom already had her dress picked out. Dad joked about crying when Callie crossed the stage. I wasn't part of any of those conversations. Somewhere inside, a quiet truth began to settle. If they hadn't seen me, by now they never truly would. The week before graduation was supposed to feel triumphant, but for me it felt strangely hollow. I'd spent 4 years stitching myself together with determination, late nights, and quiet endurance, yet standing on the edge of that milestone, I felt more invisible than ever. While Callie floated through the days planning hairstyles and photo angles, I juggled extra shifts to cover the last of my outstanding bills. My parents never asked whether I needed help with a cap and gown transportation, or even a meal to celebrate afterward. One night after finishing a tutoring session, I stepped outside into the cool air and checked my phone. A text from Mom blinked on the screen. "Hey, sweetie, we're thinking of taking Callie out for a graduation brunch afterward. You should come if you're free." If I'm free. As if I were an accessory to the event. As if the day meant nothing for me. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I walked slowly back to my dorm, the hallway lights flickering overhead, casting long shadows along the peeling walls. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wooden hair clip Grandma had given me years ago. I hadn't worn it in a long time. It reminded me too much of wanting things I didn't believe I deserved. But that night, I held it differently. Not as a reminder of loss, but as a reminder of truth. Someone had once seen me clearly. The next morning, something shifted. Not anger, just clarity. I opened an email I had saved for weeks, a confirmation that I would be receiving a departmental award during the commencement ceremony. It wasn't flashy, but it mattered. My name, my effort, my work all recognized without anyone's influence but my own. I hadn't told my parents, partly because they never asked, partly because I didn't want to watch their indifference stain something so hard-earned. As the ceremony neared, I felt a strange calm settle into my chest. For the first time, I wasn't hoping they'd notice me. I wasn't rehearsing words. I wasn't imagining hugs. And I wasn't waiting for approval that had never existed. I ironed my gown alone, brewed a cheap cup of coffee, and looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't see the forgotten daughter anymore. I saw the woman who had survived everything thrown at her. Graduation wouldn't fix the past, but it would mark the moment I stopped carrying its weight. And without knowing it, my parents were walking straight into the first shock of their lives. Commencement. Morning arrived wrapped in sunlight, the kind that made the campus lawns glow and the brick buildings look almost unreal. Students swarmed around in gowns and honor cords, hugging, shouting, taking pictures like they were trying to freeze time. I walked alone toward the ceremony grounds, letting the noise wash over me without sinking in. My gown hung a little loose on the shoulders secondhand, but it felt right, honest, earned. I found my seat among rows of folding chairs set up beneath an archway of spring flowers. As I adjusted the tassel on my cap, I heard my name shouted across the crowd. There she is. My parents waved as if I'd been the one missing all morning. Callie stood between them, radiant in a new white dress under her gown, makeup perfect, wearing the confidence of someone who'd never had to worry about anything more stressful than a late assignment. Mom hurried toward me first. "Sweetie, you should have told us where you were sitting. We almost lost you in the crowd." I smiled politely. I was just getting settled. Callie beamed at Mom. "We already took pictures by the fountain. You have to see them. They turned out so good, I think I'll frame the one with the dad." "That's the one," Dad said proudly. "My graduate." They never asked if I wanted a photo. When the ceremony began, the dean welcomed everyone, thanked donors and faculty, and congratulated parents for their unwavering support. I almost laughed. Support to me had been a myth, the kind of thing people talked about like it was universal, when really it was selective, distributed by preference, not fairness. Rows of graduates lined up to cross the stage. My stomach tightened with anticipation, not fear, but something sharper. I knew what was coming, even if my parents didn't. When Callie's name was called, Mom gasped dramatically, clutching her hands to her chest. Dad stood to take a dozen pictures. Callie walked with the practiced grace of someone performing for the camera. She blew a kiss toward them before stepping down. Mom wiped her eyes. "That's our girl, our girl." Not once in my life had that phrase ever included me. The ceremony continued until the announcer reached the special recognitions. My heartbeat quickened. The dean spoke into the microphone with deliberate clarity. "Before we proceed with the final diplomas, we would like to honor a student whose exceptional academic performance and service to the department have earned her this year's Award for Excellence in Accounting." I felt it before my name was spoken, like the air shifted around me. "This year's recipient is Jianna Harper." The applause was loud. Students near me clapped hard, even cheered. But the sound that cut through everything was the silence behind me. I turned my head slightly, and there they were, my parents frozen. Callie's smile had slipped, replaced by something strained and unfamiliar. Mom's hands hovered midair as if she had planned to clap, but couldn't reconcile the movement with what she was seeing. Dad's jaw tightened, his expression twisting in a way I couldn't read. Their faces had gone pale, exactly like I knew they would. I walked toward the stage, every step grounding me deeper into myself. I felt tall, even in flat shoes. When the dean placed the certificate in my hands, I didn't look toward the cameras. I looked at the audience, directly at my parents, and for the first time in my life, they looked small. After the ceremony, while students swarmed their families, while laughter and photos filled the air, I lingered near the back of the crowd. They approached me slowly, like they were unsure whether they were allowed to. Mom spoke first. "Jianna, why didn't you tell us?" Her voice wasn't soft, it wasn't proud. It was bewildered, like my success had interrupted a story she thought she controlled. I met her eyes. "You never asked." It was the simplest truth I'd ever spoken, and it landed between us like a stone in water, rippling through every year of silence, every moment they'd overlooked me, every time they called me the strong one instead of their daughter. Dad cleared his throat. "We just didn't realize you were doing all that. You always seemed fine." "I had to seem fine," I said quietly. "You only check on the ones who seem fragile." Mom flinched. Callie stepped forward, then her smile tentative, her voice a whisper. "Jianna, we didn't know. I didn't know. I believed her more than I believed our parents." Callie had never needed to question the structure she'd been raised in. When the world is built for you, you rarely ask who built it. Before I could respond, a woman in a tailored suit approached me. She extended her hand. "Jianna Harper, I'm Lucinda. I've reviewed your seminar work with Professor Allen. If you're open to it, I'd love to talk to you about opportunities with our firm in New York." My breath caught, not from shock, but from the feeling of a door opening exactly where it was meant to. I shook her hand. "I'm definitely open to talking." Lucinda smiled warmly before walking off, leaving the four of us standing in a tension so thick it felt physical. Dad tried to recover his composure. "New York, that's big. Maybe we can help you figure things out," I cut him off gently. "I've been figuring things out on my own for a long time." Mom reached for my arm, her voice cracking. "Jianna, honey, we're proud of you. Of course we are." I stepped back, not harshly, but firmly. Pride isn't something you get to announce when it's convenient. There was no anger in my tone, just truth. Callie's eyes glistened, and for a moment she looked like a child again, lost, unsure. "Are we okay?" she asked faintly. I inhaled, let the air settle. "We will be, but not today, because today belonged to me, to the girl who walked alone, worked alone, endured alone, to the woman who didn't need permission to shine. As I walked away from them, sunlight hit the wooden hair clip in my hair, warm and steady. I didn't have to turn back to know they were still standing there, stunned, confronted by the reality they had shaped. For the first time in my life, their silence didn't hurt. It proved something I had always known but never accepted. Strength was never the excuse they claimed it to be. It was the truth I built when they gave me nothing else. I didn't leave campus right away. I found a quiet bench near the science building, the one place where the crowds thinned and the noise softened. My phone buzzed with messages from classmates, professors, even the department chair. Not a single one from my parents. I wasn't surprised. I wasn't hurt either. For the first time, there was nothing left inside me waiting for their reaction. Later that evening, as the sky faded to a soft orange, Callie texted me, "I'm sorry. I didn't see things the way you did. I want to understand." I stared at the message for a long time before replying, "Take your time." I did. That was enough for now. 2 days later, Lucinda emailed me a formal invitation to interview in New York. I read it 3 times, not because I doubted it, but because it felt like a door I had carved myself finally swung open. No inheritance, no safety net, no parental hand guiding me, just my work, my name, my courage. As I packed my dorm room, folding my gowns and notes into a single suitcase, I realized something simple and liberating. I wasn't running from anything. I was walking toward the life I had built with my own hands. I landed in New York a week later, stepping into a city that didn't know my past or the shadows I'd carried for years. And somehow that anonymity felt like freedom. I walked through Midtown with my resume tucked under my arm and the wooden hair clip steady in my hair, knowing every step forward was mine alone. Being the strong one had never been a compliment. It was the excuse they used to leave me behind. But now it was my power. If this story resonates with you, share your thoughts below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.